Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Thursday, March 3rd. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. And we begin tonight with a painful, shared experience. And it comes from the gas station. Records keep falling as pump prices keep rising in San Diego County. KPBS reporter John Carroll says calls for legislators in Sacramento to do something about it are getting louder.
The average price per gallon in the county notched its largest increase since September of 2019 over the last day, up 8 cents to an average $4.97 a gallon, its 14th record high in 16 days. Stories about high gas prices typically include interviews with drivers at the pump who are upset about those prices, but we already know most of you don't like those prices. So this story instead is focused on ideas from different sides of the political spectrum to do something about it. San Diego civil rights advocate Shane Harris wants Governor Newsom to declare a state of emergency, which would allow him to suspend the state gas tax for up to 90 days. The tax is now 51 cents a gallon.
It's about those everyday people that I'm thinking about in the urban inner city who will struggle every time they go to the pump.
The unfolding disaster in Ukraine is getting much of the blame for the most recent surge in prices, and Harris says that's what spurred him to act. But calls to suspend the tax are not new.
The reason I want to suspend the gas tax is because gas prices are outrageously high.
Republican Assemblymember Kevin Kiley, who represents the suburbs west of Sacramento, has introduced a bill which would suspend the state tax for 6 months.
Especially since the governor's talking about a $60 billion surplus, supposedly. The least we could do is give Californians, just temporarily, although I'd like to see it be more permanent, but at least for 6 months, some relief.
Governor Newsom has offered to suspend the next hike in the gas tax, but that would only be about 3 cents. Even that received a cool response from legislative leaders. When we asked San Diego State Senator Toni Atkins about it today, her office issued a statement which says in part that she will evaluate proposals and the state's financial condition in the coming months. But from an economist's point of view, support for suspending the tax.
The money raised from the gas tax is normally used to fund infrastructure type of programs, but again, with the state running such a huge surplus, I can see that some of that surplus can be directed to replacing the gas tax funds themselves.
Even if the tax is suspended, current estimates say we could easily see hikes of between 50 to 75 cents in the coming weeks, gobbling up any tax suspension savings, putting us right back in the unenviable position we're in now. John Carroll, KPBS News.
And meanwhile, in Los Angeles, gas prices surged to $5 a gallon for the first time ever. AAA reports the average price hit $5.01 today, but some LA gas stations are charging over $6, even $7 a gallon to fill up. Experts point to the surge in crude prices brought on by the conflict in Ukraine. More than 1 million people have now fled Ukraine to escape the escalating violence, prompting UN officials to fear this could become Europe's largest refugee crisis this century. And as Isabel Rosales tells us, delegations from Russia and Ukraine are meeting to discuss a possible ceasefire.
More than 1 million people so far escaping the violence in Ukraine, according to the United Nations.
Ukrainians are very friendly. We don't want to have war. We don't want to have quarrels with somebody. We want just peace.
This as Russia continues its assault on key Ukrainian cities.
We have continuous shelling for 26 hours. 26 hours they are destroying our city.
Laying siege to Mariupol and tightening its control of Ukraine's south.
We do not have water supply, we do not have sanitary system, and we do not have heating.
One senior U.S. defense official says Russian forces have shown a willingness to hit civilian infrastructure on purpose.
Dozens have been killed, including children and women, and it's a nightmare.
Delegations from the two countries meeting again amid the violence. On the agenda, an immediate ceasefire, armistice, and creating humanitarian corridors for the evacuation of civilians.
It's awful. We are crying all the time. It's the hard situation.
There is no reason for this to be happening right now.
The European Union is now offering them temporary protected status. In Washington, Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
And cash, bicycle helmets, and even bulletproof vests are among the donations pouring into the House of Ukraine in Balboa Park. As KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado shows us, every donation is accepted with a hug.
Thank you. I've prayed over this hat, whoever gets it. I pray that they'll be safe.
Derek Morris was moved to donate this military-grade helmet, along with some goggles, by the images of ordinary people in Ukraine defending their country.
You see people standing in the street in front of vehicles with no protection.
He brought them to the House of Ukraine, one of the international cottages at Balboa Park, where an effort is underway to help those staying behind in a country being shelled and bombed by Russia around the clock.
All country is helping. Nobody just sits and yeah.
Alla Boyko, a volunteer at the House of Ukraine, says they especially need gently used military-grade armor, helmets and boots.
Because we have a lot of people who want to fight in Ukraine, men, but they don't have any protection. They just on the street of the cave and they can be killed anytime.
Among them, her own family.
Because of bombing, kids are scared. Her husband is military as well. I'm praying every day, and I'm scared because, they don't have any bomb shelter.
Walter Scranton, a Vietnam vet, says he knows how ugly war can be and was compelled to come bring in a bulletproof vest he had in his stash.
This is heavy.
Oh, nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope it helps somebody.
Yes. Yes.
It's a horrible situation. It really is, but
for all of us.
They'll see it through.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No problem.
May I hug you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
These donations will help ordinary people turned heroes live to fight another day, just like Boyko's cousin, who wanted people here to know just how much that means to them.
They can be on attack anytime, and she was very grateful, very thankful to you guys.
Donations given from the heart and accepted with love for Ukraine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, this one's prayed over. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your help.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
And KPBS is following the war in Ukraine on all of our platforms. Our local coverage on Evening and Midday Edition is supplemented with the latest from our national partners at NPR and PBS NewsHour. It's all right there at kpbs.org and the KPBS YouTube page. Governor Gavin Newsom wants to make it easier to force people with severe mental illness into long-term treatment. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the mayor of San Diego is on board.
Newsom is proposing a bill that would create so-called care courts in every county across California. People suffering from debilitating psychosis could be brought before a judge and forced into a long-term mental health treatment plan, and the county would be required to pay for it. Newsom says the state will step up its support so local governments aren't left with the bill.
If the budget's approved this year, we will have support specifically for 33,000 new beds and placements, clinically supported new beds and placements.
Some mental health experts have been wary of expanding the state's ability to force people into treatment. But San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria says the status quo is not working.
For far too long, government at every level has allowed individuals who struggle with mental illness and addiction to languish untreated on our streets, cycling between our jails and emergency rooms with little hope of ever getting the care that they truly and desperately need.
State officials expect between 7,000 and 12,000 people would be eligible for forced mental health treatment under the program. That's a small minority of the state's homeless population, although the severely mentally ill are often the most visible among homeless Californians. The governor hopes the plan can win approval from state lawmakers by June, with the rollout targeted for January. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
A recent state audit condemned San Diego County jails for seeing 185 in-custody deaths over 15 years. Now, KPBS race and equity reporter Christina Kim says a new study is calling for stronger law enforcement oversight.
San Diegans for Justice helped establish the City of San Diego's Commission on Police Practices. Now, it's taking on the county's Citizen Law Enforcement Review Board, or CLRB, which oversees the sheriff and probation department. Today, the group released a new study that outlines how CLRB can become more independent and effective. The most important step is expanding its jurisdiction beyond sheriff deputies, says Andrea St. Julian, the group's co-chair.
For CLRB to be limited to only investigating alleged wrongdoings by deputies is really too limiting. CLRB should be able to investigate complaints against all staff.
The state audit last month found CLRB failed to investigate nearly 1/3 of its in-custody deaths. That needs to change, says Yusuf Miller.
The community has suffered from a lack of power and strength from the CLRB. The community has suffered in not only inconvenience, but the loss of life.
CLRB will hear about the report on Tuesday and is open and committed to enacting changes, says Paul Parker, the executive officer of CLRB.
If the community members in San Diego want the best possible civilian oversight, we're going to have to expand the type of model that we have. Right now, everything that we do is based solely upon a complaint.
And that's something he wants to see change, so CLRB can investigate through other means, like
pattern and practice investigations, having access to databases, or whatever needs to happen for us to be able to do the appropriate oversight.
Anything that expands CLRB's powers or jurisdiction will need a vote from the Board of Supervisors. Christina Kim, KPBS News.
It's known as the Fat Leonard bribery scandal, and today opening statements continued in the trial of 5 naval officers accused of accepting lavish gifts and services in exchange for millions of dollars of ship repair work. The men are also charged with giving classified information to a Singapore-based company that then overcharged the government for repair work by $35 million over the course of a decade. 29 people in total have admitted to providing Leonard Glenn Francis, known as Fat Leonard, information as well as funneling repair work to his company. Activists in Mexico are criticizing the lack of transparency surrounding the murder cases of 2 Tijuana journalists. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis explains why in Mexico, big announcements of arrests mean less than you might think.
Last month, Mexican authorities announced the arrest of 3 men suspected in the killing of Lourdes Maldonado, and last week 10 men were arrested in connection to the death of Margarito Martinez. But not much else has been made public in either case. Prosecutors have not said what evidence they have, what the motives were, or what weapons were used in the fatal shootings of the 2 Tijuana journalists. Reporters have been barred from covering the proceedings, and court documents have not been made public. Local reporter Sonia de Anda says that the public is being kept in the dark.
La verdad es que nos tienen en ciego.
98% of all violent crimes in Mexico are never prosecuted. Activists who track violence against the press in Mexico say there's a repeated pattern of authorities announcing big arrests and then nothing happens. De Anda says that the lack of transparency in both cases does not inspire confidence that justice will be served.
No. Definitivamente no nos genera ningún tipo de confianza.
Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
Parents of 216 children separated from their families at the border under the Trump administration still have not been found. That's according to a federal court filing providing a progress report on President Biden's pledge to reunite migrant families. 125 children have rejoined their parents since that effort was announced. A total of more than 3,000 children were separated from their families at the border under Trump. A sign that COVID-19 case numbers are on the decline in San Diego County. Today, the CDC updated its community levels map. San Diego is now listed as low instead of high. That means masks are no longer recommended indoors, although they should still be worn by those with symptoms, a positive test, or exposure to COVID. It comes as the White House announces a plan to get back to life more like it was before the pandemic. Amy Kiley reports on what it'll take to make that happen.
Do you remember this and this and even this? The White House says you might get to enjoy some of those things again soon without having to worry as much about COVID-19. Here's the plan.
First, protect against and treat COVID. Second, prepare for any new variants. Third, prevent economic and school shutdowns. Fourth, vaccinate the world and save lives.
Let's break down those 4 items. Some pharmacies are preparing, quote, test to treat initiatives. They'll offer free COVID-19 tests. If you're positive, you'll go home with FDA-authorized antiviral medicine for free. If new variants emerge,
we are ready to deploy personnel and resources to quickly update the vaccines.
The White House wants you to be able to safely go to work and send your kids to school without shutdowns. And the U.S. continues a push for more COVID vaccinations worldwide. On top of that plan, officials are considering letting you fly without a mask. That mandate expires March 18th.
Transportation is another arena where I think a lot of us are looking forward to being able to put so many of these pandemic restrictions behind us.
The travel mask mandate might end.
When we see those numbers begin to drop to the levels that show that safety can be had, now we all have to get there working together.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Crews are getting the upper hand on that large wildfire burning in the Cleveland National Forest. It's called the Jim Fire, and it's burning in the Trabuco Canyon area along the Orange and Riverside County lines. Besides an air and ground attack, crews are hoping rain and cooler temperatures moving in will help get the fire out. No structures are threatened, and the cause remains under investigation.
Happy Thursday, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to KPBS News. I'm Marvin Gomez, taking a look at our forecast here in San Diego County. And we have a lot to talk about because of a storm system that is going to bring 1 to 2 inches of rain across the mountains. Most of San Diego County will turn chilly, and unsettled conditions are expected across the region for this weekend. Check out the winter weather advisories are in effect for the higher elevations starting midnight Friday all the way through Saturday night. Most of those alerts or advisories, I should say, are going to be for elevations above 4,500 feet. However, notice the mountains north of the LA Basin and to the east, we have winter weather alerts there as well. Looking specifically at San Diego County, at least in Mount Laguna, we're anticipating 8 to 12 inches of snow. Palomar also looking at 2 to 3 inches of snow there. In the valleys, or in the deserts, excuse me, on the eastern side of San Diego County, wind gusts are expected to be between 40 and 50 miles per hour. Here's a quick look at tonight's forecast. Unsettled conditions, the wet weather slowly pressing in. Temperatures cooling down to 58 degrees in San Diego County. Here's a quick look at futurecast with all of the rain that's going to come across our area overnight. And waking up Friday morning, we could be looking at some pockets of heavy rain for most of San Diego County, and unsettled weather is expected for most of the day. Our highs for Friday afternoon climbing up to 64 degrees in Oceanside. Umbrellas are going to be needed in most of San Diego County and places like Mount Laguna. This is going to be one of the spots where we will see some snow falling. Into our Saturday, we have yet another piece of energy coming here into Southern California, and that is also going to be bringing a little bit of those unsettled conditions for us along the coast for the second or first day of the weekend, depending on how you see Saturday. And more quiet weather is expected for the second half of the weekend. Early next week, the weather pattern looks a lot quieter, not just for the coast, but also in inland areas, seeing some sunshine for Monday. But first, again, we got to get through some rounds of rain and the possibility for isolated thunderstorms on Friday across our area. In the mountains, it is going to start with rain and most likely end with snow both Friday and Saturday. Specifically on Saturday, that is going to be the day where we're going to be tracking the snow. And across the deserts, Friday, that will be the day for us to see a couple of showers. Our high on Saturday only climbing up to 59 degrees. I'm Marvin Gomez with your forecast for KPBS News.
The University of California at Berkeley will have to accept 3,000 fewer students than they plan to in the next academic year. California Supreme Court has ordered a freeze to the university's enrollment to stay at the same level from the 2020-2021 academic year. The move was a denial of its petition against an earlier ruling from a lower court and stems from a legal battle with a resident group called Save Berkeley Neighborhoods. The group filed suit against the university in 2018 for not addressing a correlation between increased student numbers and then issues with housing, homelessness, as well as traffic and noise. The company that many blame for killing traditional bookstores is closing its own brick-and-mortar locations. Amazon is closing 68 of its retail locations. All Amazon bookstores will be shut down, including the one at Westfield UTC. 4-star and pop-up stores will also close. The company says it will stay in the grocery business in a big way with Whole Foods, Amazon Fresh, as well as Amazon Go. California has ambitious goals for making all new cars zero carbon emission, and that means more electric cars and a lot more car batteries that will need to be reused or recycled. KPBS Science and Technology reporter Thomas Fudge has the story.
A lab at San Diego State University is filled with bundles of wires, some of them testing battery cells. And this black steel case, which contains about 300 cells and weighs more than 1,000 pounds. It's an electric car battery that once inhabited a Nissan Leaf. Now imagine about 1 million battery cases like that being dumped into California's waste and recycling stream every year as electric vehicles and their batteries reach the end of their lives. That's what could happen soon after 2035, when all new cars sold in California must be zero carbon emission based on an executive order by Governor Newsom. The California Energy Commission is funding 4 demonstration projects to find ways to repurpose electric car batteries. 2 of those projects are happening in San Diego County, and one of them is right here in the engineering building at San Diego State.
Some of them may have enough power or energy capacity that we can use for energy storage projects.
San Diego State electrical engineering professor Chris Mee is one person looking for a way to reuse electric car batteries.
If you extend the life for another 10 years, you delay the whole life cycle of those batteries, right?
When Chris Mee speaks about using the batteries for energy storage, he's talking about storing solar energy. That would turn car batteries into solar energy banks for businesses and agencies that can make withdrawals whenever the sun doesn't shine. When he talks about the life cycle of an EV battery, it's a complex story of both energy generation and energy inputs required to make the battery. First, you have to mine the materials needed to make it, all that lithium, cobalt, nickel, and manganese. Then you have to manufacture it. Its first life comes as an EV battery. The second life could be as that bank for solar power. Finally, it has to be recycled. Kevin Wood, professor of mechanical engineering at SDSU, is also working on the demonstration project that's funded by the California Energy Commission. He says lithium-ion car batteries are typically retired when an electric car loses that crucial mileage range. But even at that point, the batteries still have 60 to 80% of their energy life left.
So why don't we try and utilize those batteries, right, and use those systems that we already have in place, that there's no extra energy input required, right, and use those for grid-scale energy storage.
California is leading the way in the use of electric vehicles. The governor's office reports California has 10% of the nation's cars, but 40% of all zero-emission cars. Caroline Godkin is Deputy Secretary for Environmental Policy at the Cal EPA. Godkin says used up electric vehicle batteries are hazardous waste and their elements ultimately need to be recycled, even if they have a second life as an energy storage vessel. But there's another good reason to recycle them.
As we think about our circular economy, and particularly the critical materials which are in these batteries, they're also a source of these critical materials to be put back into the manufacturing process.
Scientists Chris Mee and Kevin Wood say one key issue is finding a way to make battery reuse economically feasible. Wood says China exports newly mined lithium iron phosphate batteries. They're not as good as car batteries, but they're quite inexpensive and good enough to use for solar energy storage. Wood says it may not make sense for a customer to buy a repurposed electric car battery when a new one from China will cost not much more.
Sustainability and cost are two really, really important things, and they're not always correlated, right? Sustainability a lot of times costs more money.
He says there are a lot of challenging debates to come about environmental sustainability and the cost of it.
And the reality of the situation is cost a lot of times wins.
Cal EPA's Car Battery Advisory Group expects to finalize its report on reuse and recycling of batteries this month. Then it'll be passed on to the California legislature with the expectation that new laws will follow. Some big questions remain, like who will be responsible for reusing and recycling these batteries? Wood says that is one of those challenging debates people will have before 2035, when all new cars in California will have to be zero carbon emission. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
And now for something completely different and very fun. When NCAA's March Madness basketball tournament was canceled in 2020, the San Diego Humane Society stepped right in with a competition of their own. March Meowness is back and ready for your pet photos and your votes. Much like March Madness, it's a tournament, albeit with much more furry or even some scaly competitors. The top 16 pets plus 16 wild cards will move on to the 32-seed March Meowness bracket. And voting is free. The winner will be announced in April and will get a $250 Target gift card. You can send in your photos now through March 14th. Okay, challenge is accepted. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.